Hi, my name's Navin, and a year ago I set up this 55-gallon planted low-tech aquarium inspired by the Walstad Method. Diana Walstad is a scientist who literally wrote the book on keeping this style of heavily planted aquariums that feature low bioloads and soil substrates. Ecology of the Planted Aquarium explains how plants are crucial to maintaining freshwater ecosystems in home aquariums. By working with nature rather than against it, fish keepers can achieve more balanced and naturalistic aquariums by incorporating soil substrates, lots of live plants, and minimal fish stocking. Let's take a look at my aquarium to see how I incorporated these concepts in a 55-gallon planted tank. Walstad Method tanks need to have a substrate with soil. Walstad tanks usually have two layers. The bottom layer is soil, and then the top layer is either really fine gravel or more commonly sand. These layers are made before the tank is filled with water. In my tank, you can see that I'm using a really thick substrate bed, about 4 inches tall. I started with 2 inches of organic potting soil, capped by 2 inches of black diamond blasting sand. You should not clean your substrate with a siphon or disturb the sand cap once the substrate bed is established. These distinct layers are very important because if you just have soil in your tank and then you add water, the soil will explode directly into the tank water. The sand is placed on top of the soil to weigh it down and keep it underneath. This prevents the soil from mixing into the water column. It's very important to keep this sand cap intact. This method not only provides all of the essential nutrients for the plants to thrive, but also provides beneficial bacteria a lot of surface area to grow on within your substrate. Essentially, the beneficial bacteria that breaks down waste and helps keep your tank water safe for your fish doesn't really live in the water column. They live primarily on the surface area of things in your tank, such as your filter media, any hardscape like rocks and driftwood, and especially in your substrate. So this means thicker substrate beds equals more surface area for beneficial bacteria to grow on, thus giving us a larger biological filter. So bacteria in my substrate is cleaning the water in my tank? Yes, this concept is called the nitrogen cycle and it happens in every aquarium. The simplified version of this is that microorganisms such as nitrifying bacteria are converting waste products like ammonia into nitrites, which are highly toxic to fish. But eventually, other bacteria are converting those nitrites into nitrates, which are less harmful to fish and act as a great food source for plants. Nitrates, the end product of the nitrogen cycle that plants use as a food source, are still toxic to fish, but not as toxic as nitrites. And all of this starts from ammonia being present in your tank, most commonly in the forms of fish poop and decaying plant matter. While plants do need these nitrates in order to fuel their growth, having very high level of nitrates in your tank is very harmful to your fish. Walstad's method is using plants to act as another filter for our tank. In my dwarf cichlid tank, I don't have a soil layer at the bottom of my substrate. This means I have to manually fertilize with root tabs and liquid fertilizers in order for my plants to grow. I also have to rely on the accumulation of mulm, which is broken down plant matter that makes its way deep into the substrate and provides nutrients to the plant's roots that way. Walstad Method tanks really need to be heavily planted in order to function optimally. While nitrifying bacteria do a great job at converting ammonia into nitrites and then eventually into nitrates, plants will take it one step further by physically removing these compounds from our tank. In order for our aquarium plants to grow, they suck up all of the ammonia and nitrates as a food source. Nitrites, the middle step of the nitrogen cycle, is less utilized by plants because in fully established cycled aquariums, the beneficial bacteria should be converting all of these into nitrates. Nitrites are highly toxic to fish, so if you ever test your aquarium and notice that you have nitrites, it's probably not because your plants are ineffective at absorbing them, but more likely something to do with your bacteria colony, such as a crashed cycle. Additionally, plants do a great job at removing heavy metals such as zinc and copper, which may be found in your local water supply. When I first started this tank, I initially planted a lot of jungle vallisneria. Jungle val is a very fast-growing background plant that creates ribbon-like leaves that grow up to a meter long. It did a great job at doing what it was supposed to do in a Walstad Method tank: tap into the nutrients in the soil substrate and grow. Fast-growing plants like jungle val also help to minimize algae growth. Algae is a plant and generally is not harmful to your aquarium. However, most people don't like the look of algae. Without adding our own aquarium plants, algae is the only plant in our aquarium that can use these nutrients to grow. By adding aquarium plants that you actually want to grow in your tank, your plants will use these nutrients first before algae gets a chance to establish itself. Eventually, the jungle val kinda took over and I wanted to change it up a bit. So I ripped out all of the jungle val in my aquarium and purchased a variety pack of stem plants to incorporate new colors and textures into my aquarium. The coolest plant I have, in my opinion, is this Madagascar lace plant. My other plants are Hygrophila angustifolia, a green stem plant, Bacopa, Ludwigia repens super red, Rotala rotundifolia, Dwarf sagittaria, and a lot of Anubias. If you struggle with keeping submerged plants alive in your aquarium, I highly recommend checking out some floating plants. They actually do a better job at filtering out nutrients from your aquarium because they have access to the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere because their leaves are exposed to the surface air. Walstad also mentions in her book that tanks with good circulation actually increases the effectiveness of floating plants' ability to remove toxins from the water. Just be sure not to create too much movement on the surface of your aquarium. Many floating plants will prefer calmer waters and will melt if there's too much agitation on the surface. Just because in our tank we have bacteria breaking down waste and plants removing them does not mean that we should go ahead and stock our tank with the biggest fish that produce the most amount of waste. Having a low bioload is very important to maintaining a Walstad-style aquarium. The plants and the beneficial bacteria in our biological filter need to be able to keep up with the amount of waste that your fish are producing. It is very possible to have a tank with too many fish that's producing too much waste that is not being filtered out as quickly as it is being produced. This leads to progressively dirtier tank water that creates the necessity for water changes. Physically removing some of the dirty tank water out of your tank and replenishing it with fresh water to decrease the overall levels of toxins in our aquariums. Walstad's method is all about minimizing maintenance like water changes by using these natural processes and plants. For example, goldfish would be a very poor choice for a Walstad method tank. They produce too much waste and are known to eat plants. Common goldfish are more suited for outdoor ponds, not beginner aquariums. Tropical nanofish like smaller tetras and Endler's live bearers are great options for heated Walstad tanks. If you're not running a heater, then cold water fish like white cloud mountain minnows are a great choice for your tank. I'm using them in my 55-gallon. By having a large, heavily planted aquarium and only a handful of small fish, you can get away with just doing water top-offs to help combat evaporation. And maybe the occasional small water change whenever necessary for reasons like remineralization or improving water clarity. If there's one thing that I want you to take away from this video, it would be this quote from Diana's book. "Tanks that are unbalanced need constant cleaning and adjustment." If you find yourself struggling with maintaining stable water parameters or are constantly intervening with chemical additives or water changes, perhaps plants and patience may be the solution you've been looking for. Something as simple as sticking a cutting of pothos into your aquarium and letting it take root may be the first step to a healthy aquarium. Thank you so much for watching my second YouTube video. Leave a comment down below if you ever tried keeping a Walstad Method aquarium or if you're planning to in the future. I would love to read your stories and feedback. Additionally, I make content related to aquariums and fish keeping regularly, so please consider subscribing. I hope you have a great rest of your day.